in a clearing in the woods, surrounded by trees and filled with patches of grass and dirt. Cammie aimed the shovel, one far too big for him, into the hardened soil and jumped, landing each of his small feet onto the steps of the tool, driving its blade down. He balanced on it for a moment before jumping off as a large pile of dirt came loose. Cammie was a mess, as would be expected of a boy digging in the dirt. His face was dusty. His forearms and hands were patterned in brown, and his shoes had been filled with almost as much soil as they were filled with feet. Dirt had been crammed underneath every fingernail. His shirt was wrinkled and torn at the hem. The blue denim of his pants was so dirty, the color was nearly invisible, and the knees had been stained a green from the grass, with threadbare holes beginning to emerge. Dropping the shovel to the side, Cammie grabbed the spade, a small garden tool he had borrowed without permission, and continued to dig down. Around him, the leaves of the trees sang gently as the wind passed through them. But outside the rustling of the leaves and the sound of Cammie's digging, the clearing sat in total silence. No animals or critters, no birds or insects, just the wind, the leaves, and the sound of the spade. Cammie hadn't gotten used to the silence of the clearing, so he filled it with whistling. He had learned how to whistle just a few weeks before, and was proud at how quickly he had improved. So, he whistled the same tune he heard the men whistling as they came and went from the woods. The wind, the leaves, the spade, and the whistling, all interrupted by a crack. Cammie had struck something as he dug down. He dropped the spade to his side and cleared the dirt in the hole away with his fingers. What most boys his age might mistake as white stones, Cammie recognized right away. Bones. He cleared the loosened soil away from the bones, revealing one after another. Some thin, some long, some thick, all of them white. Until he found it. The skull. Cammie did not feel afraid. Skeletons had never really frightened him. At school, during Halloween, he had seen a drawing of 5 dancing skeletons. They had looked so silly and happy that Cammie could never imagine them as anything but friendly. He removed the skull from the ground as gently as he could and held it in front of his face, its empty sockets opposite his own eyes. "Hello, Mr. Skeleton," Cammie said, trying to smile politely, like the adults always wanted. The skull said nothing. Oh, Cammie realized, looking down at the ground. Your jaw. He saw the jaw, disconnected from the rest of the skull, lying in the dirt. That must make it hard to talk, Cammie commented. The skull stared blankly back. I'm sorry for breaking your house, Cammie said, glancing at the hole he had kneeled in. I was looking for treasure, and I didn't know you lived here. He reached down to grab the jawbone to give it back to Mr. Skeleton, but his hand grazed against the dirt and found another curve of white. He brushed away the earth, soiling the legs of his pants even more, and removed from the hole he had dug yet another skull. Ah, Cammie said, suddenly feeling sheepish. Hello, Mrs. Skeleton. Girls made him nervous. The second skull watched him in silence. Grown-ups don't like it when I bother them when they're together, Cammie admitted as he looked between the two. He cocked his head to the side. Are you two grown-ups? He asked. The skulls didn't seem any bigger than his own head after all. Neither of them answered. Neither of them had their jaws, so their silence made sense. Cammie then remembered what he had done. Oh, he began. I'm sorry for hurting your house, Mr. and Mrs. Skeleton. I was looking for treasure. He then clarified, but I won't take anything from here. Stealing is bad. He slowly lowered the skulls back into the hole. I'll fix your house in a jiffy, Cammie said, youthfully confident. He made sure the two skulls faced one another, and then carefully attached their jaws. Now you can talk to each other, he declared. He tried not to feel embarrassed that it almost looked like the two were about to kiss, but neither of them complained. Seeing the two of them made him think about his school, how every year he had fewer and fewer classmates, fewer and fewer friends. I'm glad you're together, Cammie admitted. It's sad when you're alone. He stepped out of the hole and began to push the pile of dirt he had made back in, fixing the damage he had caused. Using the spade, he patted the earth down, smoothing out the bumps and firming up the roof that protected Mr. and Mrs. Skeleton from the rain. With their home fixed, Cammie gathered a dozen rocks and formed a pile over the now filled hole. That way, he wouldn't forget and accidentally dig into their home again during his treasure hunt. Cammie looked around the clearing and tried to count the numerous other piles of rocks he had already made. Maybe it's a town, he said into the silence. He shrugged, grabbed his spade and oversized shovel, and made his way to an empty part of the clearing, whistling along the way.